Well, it says I'm live again. I don't see any comments, which is quite strange. Okay. Well, I'm going to push some stuff out to social with, Am I here? What is going on? I don't think that this is, Well, let's start with whether or not you can see and hear me. Thaddeus says yes. Something is happening. Oh, okay. Ooh, okay, Ecamm Live. That's the first big hiccup I've seen with Ecamm in a long, long time. I did a quick update today, which didn't seem like a critical update. And for some reason, even though I chose the correct stream, it started to push to an unpublished. I don't know what was going on. If you can see and hear me, here we are. Welcome. 13 minutes. Of course, it's 13 minutes after we were supposed to start. I did start. I was talking to people with nothing. And let me just see something. I want to look at the comments here. So very strangely, it said that I went live with an unpublished live stream that I had set up. And when incorrectly, but I saw everybody's comments. Then I deleted that. And that way I would only have one live stream that I could connect to through Ecamm. And now I still see everybody's comments. They all disappeared. They all came back. Something is up. I'll have to reach out to the twins at Ecamm and see what the heck is going on. So enough of that. Welcome, everybody. It is Wednesday, June 14th, 2023. I apologize for the tech issues. Sometimes you can't test things like that because there's no way of testing them until you go live. How's everybody doing? Now that we have some communication going on and we can chat a little bit and see where this whole thing goes. Let me know in the comments. We're going to talk about creating long-term projects today. I'm going to talk a little bit about, I don't want to say a journey, but sort of where I've come from and where I am right now and what I'm trying to figure out, which seems quite perpetual. Yeah, David, it keeps it real when things go wrong, and then I appreciate everybody hanging out and we can get into this whole thing. So the only way these work, by the way, I'm Jem Schofield, the C47, probably everybody here I know anyway, is if we go back and forth. So it's about, if it's a live stream and we're going to do it that way, then it's about the comments and interacting not only with each other, but with me. If you want to make a comment, you'll see there's a lot of at the C47s in the comments. That gets my eye on that, and then I can respond or we can keep the topic going. So what I wanted to talk about today may or may not be relevant to everybody, but it's really about those projects which are not client-based projects. So, as creative people, I think most of us are driven by, making a living at doing what we're doing, most of us, but also making sure that we're doing things that kind of scratch that creative itch, but will hopefully become more than that in the future. And that's certainly been the case for me. I mean, when I started the C47, I already had a production company that had been going for 10, 12 years. And I decided during the downturn of 2008, I won't rehash this too much, that after not working for the better part of a year, I needed to do something creatively. I needed to scratch that itch. And so what I did is I started creating content every day of the week, well, 5 days of the week, and that became something called Gearbox. Erroneously, I didn't publish that to my YouTube channel. I decided that would be better off from a branding standpoint to live on the C47.com website. So I used a platform at the time called blip.tv. I shot, edited, and uploaded videos to there. That was a mess when they went down. I had 24 hours to sort of recover as many of the videos as I could. It was pretty messy. Um, and I did that content for about 3 years. So that was pretty consistently, first 2.5 years. I mean, it was religious practically. It was, I shot Sunday for Monday and then Thursday for Friday and all those days in between. So you get 5 episodes every week. And it was a great growth period for me, not only to start creating content in and around this industry and learning even more about production, but it's also really what started the C47 as what it is today, which is really a company that focuses on creating educational content. Most of that content isn't specific to, well, a lot of the content is specific to our industry, but a lot of it is not. But I specialize, if there's something I specialize in creating uh, and selling through education. So, I'm just right now in the process of finishing up a project for Canon, and that's a training series on the Canon R5C. And I've done that for a lot of other manufacturers, but I also create children's content and I create, doc style promo content and things like that. But that's sort of where my wheelhouse is. But at the same time, um, after I stopped doing Gearbox, there's always been this, I want to do something else that's consistently creative, that allows me to grow as somebody who does this for a living, and that hopefully has value to a viewer. So I found that to be incredibly hard. And I think part of it is um, the commitment to doing something consistently. And I'd love to hear what other people think about this. But again, I'm not really talking, I want to differentiate that what I want to talk about today is the stuff that are long term creative projects. Some of them may uh, initially and continue to create income. Other ones are just to allow you to be creative and do things. So those I consider more personal projects. And then other ones might be that you start on a path and eventually that becomes something that you love doing, but also generates income. And it's the short term stuff that's easy. It's the projects where you get hired by a client, like the one I'm doing right now for Canon, that they're not easy in the sense that they just happen and there's no hard work and there's no challenges, but they're easy because they're finite. You are getting hired to do a specific thing, hopefully something that you're good at doing, and then you're creating that work or works for a particular client. And then there's usually a timeline and there's deliverables associated with that, and you get those out the door. And to me, that's well, that's how I make a living. But that's not necessarily what I only want to be doing for the long term. Because for me, the long term is, how do I do things that I love to do every single day? I'm lucky that I essentially do, but that they allow me to grow creatively. And I'm even more in control of the things that I'm doing. And we can see that with a lot of creators who are very successful on YouTube, both good and bad. Not meaning in terms of the content they create, but you can see that they get into a groove, they're consistently creating content, and then something happens. I call it burnout, and you start to see a slowdown in terms of how much content they're creating and what they're doing, and then eventually that content starts to slow down, and it generally doesn't last forever. I'm not seeing any comments, so hopefully we're still chatting about this thing. Um, and there's some obvious examples of that. I guess we'll take somebody like Casey Neistat. So this is somebody who, whether you like the content that he creates or not, was creating very, very, very consistent content for a very long time. In addition to everything else that he was doing, building his brand and starting other companies, so on and so forth. And at a certain point, probably because of many, many, many factors, that essentially stopped or slowed to a crawl. And you see that with lots and lots of creatives who are creating content, because there's two parts to it. Number one is you have to have the passion and the commitment to do it consistently. There has to be a reason that you want to be doing that besides getting subscribers and making lots of money. But the getting subscribers and making lots of money, once that starts to happen on a big scale, it has never happened for me on a big scale, is a double-edged sword, because you feel the need to then one up yourself, make something that's bigger, but that's not necessarily where that initial passion or that drive came from. So my hesitancy to starting up something that's consistent again is making sure it's something that I am genuinely interested in. It's something that I want to create content for on a regular basis. Because if I'm honest, and I think this is true for a lot of creators, the hardest part is starting. And then, well, maybe the hardest part is not starting. The hardest part is starting and continuing and doing that consistently. And that's how you create value to your audience. It's great that everybody who comes here every week, every couple of weeks, consistently is part of the channel. It's a relatively small number of people, but there's obviously something of value that you get from the channel. But um, you know, it's not necessarily, for me, on a scale, even though I don't have any desire to become, the million subscriber channel. It's not, I don't feel like I'm giving enough value to an audience right now. And I have stuff that I really want to do, and I want to do it consistently, but you have to commit to doing it. Does that make sense? Did the did the stream go dead again? It says we're live. I hope we are. I don't see any comments. If somebody could just say, yes, I'm still here, or I can hear what you're saying, even if you're taking a nap right now and you have just kind of zoned out and you're tuning out of this completely. Just one person. There we go. Thaddeus, I've been working on a long-term documentary for the last 12 years. Ooh. First 5 years was research, and year 6 was written. I was writing a book that became the basis for the long form documentary. Well, great example, Thaddeus. I mean, documentary is something that scares the bejesus out of me. Not short form documentary, but long form, because that is a tremendous commitment. It doesn't mean that all documentaries take 12 years, but it does mean that when you're committing yourself to something like that, that you really have to be committed. And I'm sure, Thaddeus, that you're probably not spending, my guess, 8 to 10 hours every day consistently for 12 years working on that documentary. If you are, then amazing. But you're probably working on other things, life, whatever that is for you, is also part of all of that. And I think that it's a good example that what happens is we want to do something creative, whether that's learning how to do something for ourselves, or it's something longer term that you want to do that you think might have value to other people. As artists, we want to communicate. So that's the basic. The basic is, as an artist, we all have a desire, whether you're an introvert, an extrovert. Some people call people in between ambiverts. They have qualities of both. As an artist, there's a desire to say something. That's what artists want to do. Um, that's pretty universal to art. And that's kind of what I think drives many artists is they want to say something. And sometimes the internal struggle is what I want to say, or does what I want to say have value to other people? And this is the age old for artists. You've got somebody who's an incredibly successful actor, and I've befriended a number of actors over the years, and some of them have been very successful. But even with all of that, there's an inside lack of confidence. And I think that that's not something that I fortunately struggle with as much as some other people. But I see it. And what's really hard for an actor as an artist is they're subjected. They have put themselves into a field which is basically all about other people evaluating you. Now, you can say that's true for a fine artist as well. You walk into a museum and you see a piece of art, and it's going to be evaluated. It's going to be interpreted by the viewer, and not every viewer is going to interpret or evaluate it the same way. Some people may absolutely love it. Some people may hate it. Some people may be indifferent to it. And some people may be affected tremendously from an emotional standpoint. Some people may not have any emotional response to it. It could be many circumstances that contribute to that. It could be the day. It could be the circumstances that person's going through in their life, meaning the viewer, the person who's viewing that art. But ultimately, when you're looking at a painting or a photograph or a piece of fine art that way, that evaluation generally happens internally for the viewer. But actors are being, and this is not a conversation about actors, but I'm just giving an example of different types of artists. Actors are constantly being evaluated for everything from the beginning of the process of being a part of a project or wanting to be a part of a project, the audition, to if they do get the project, whether that's stage or screen, their performance. And because of social media and everything else, they are constantly being evaluated even more. So they live in a constant life cycle of being evaluated by other people, very vocally most of the time. And again, that evaluation is generally very much subjective, not objective. And I think that a similar thing happens as soon as you put yourself out there as a content creator. So, what's my long-term goal? And I'd love to hear other people's as well. Um, is to create content that has value to viewers, that are interested in learning how to create their own content more effectively. And I've been fortunate over the years, both from in-person workshops, one-on-one workshops, consulting, and also through the content that I've created, to at times, not often, but at times be acknowledged for the information that people have gotten from what I've done, and that's helped them grow as people who are filmmakers, content creators, storytellers, whatever it is. I make no illusions that I'm not going to have a career producing, directing, probably even lensing, meaning, being a director of photography or cinematographer, long form narrative projects. I would like to do more narrative things, but I don't think that that's where my passion is. In fact, I know it's not where my passion is. So when I find out that people have watched the video that I've done, or been in the class that I've taught, or had some sort of interaction with me, and that has turned into them becoming better at what they do, or creating content that it is far bigger than the content that I've ever created, I love that. The first time it ever happened was when I was doing that continuous daily Gearbox, and somebody reached out to me who had been watching all of that content, and they had shot a really great, really well shot and well told documentary about gaming and video games. It was a great film, and they got a theatrical distribution, and they invited me to a screening in New York, and I met with them, and for some reason or another, the content that I had been creating, and it was really a process of me learning and then sharing the information I was learning, helped them grow as filmmakers, and then they far surpassed what I had ever created at that point in time. But that reinforced that what I love to do is learn about things and then share with others what I learn about. Um, that's not necessarily in vogue. That's not necessarily, the thing that attracts large audiences. And the other thing that you have to realize is that every single person, yourselves included, have a different way about how you go about things or deliver. So there are people who are much flashier than I am in terms of the content that they create. They spend a tremendous amount of time creating the behind the scenes or the hero footage or whatever it is that helps them tell those stories, right? So you take a person like Peter McKinnon. This is somebody who started out as a stills photographer working in a camera store, and obviously honed their craft as an editor, and had a specific way of approaching how they created content and the way that they edited. And it resonated with a lot of people. You can knock somebody, and it's very easy to knock somebody who becomes successful, and you don't have to like their flavor. You don't have to like their style. But somebody like Peter McKinnon did not become successful because they were creating content that everybody hated. It resonated with enough people. And there are large numbers of people who obviously reacted to and really liked that kind of content. It was is pseudo educational, but it's also very aspirational. And I don't think I do aspirational very well. I think I do educational very well. And so you also have to understand that what you do isn't necessarily going to have the same size audience. But there's also the other side, that's really the part that I grapple with, that I struggle with, which is the commitment to going into something again that is a long-term continuous thing. Because that, I think, if it's content that people are interested in, is where things have value. Thaddeus says, I have been through long periods where we have worked on it 8 to 10 hours a day. Right now, we are finishing the last of the interviews that need to be shot. So a lot of hurry up and wait. Copy. Watch C200 tutorials several times, and it's helped me time and time again. Hey, thanks, David. I appreciate that. And that Canon content is great because I get to conceptualize, produce, direct, and put together all of that content. So Canon is for sure involved in that process, but they are hiring people to create that content who hopefully understand what that tool can do and are creating content that that has value to the viewer beyond just marketing speak. And I'm not interested in selling through marketing. I'm interested in helping people sell through education, where people are definitely looking at a product or products that are being made by a particular manufacturer, but underlying all of that is the ability to learn how to do something and actually apply it in real life. And so it's always important to me, even if I'm doing an educational series on a particular piece of equipment, that the knowledge or some of the knowledge that people get is knowledge they can apply to other like equipment or, similar equipment. Brandon, very kind. Thank you. I'm not going to read that all out loud, but I like that. So that's what I'm struggling with. It's really, and then the other circumstance is all the other stuff, right? So I make a living, obviously not by doing this, because that's not happening. At least not right now. It's if there's an affiliate sale here or there, we're talking pennies, dollars occasionally, probably not tens of dollars or hundreds of dollars, but dollars at best. But I make my living producing content, creating and producing content for clients. And that's how, sometimes successfully, sometimes completely unsuccessfully, I send, two of my kids to college, and I pay my mortgage and, support, along with my wife, the family that we have. And it's a family of 5, and they're essentially all now pretty much in that adult phase, but they're still kids. And that's where a tremendous amount of focus goes. So I think part of that also is if you're younger, or older, and you don't have that commitment to something in your life that allows you to do things creatively a little bit with a little bit more freedom, it's a little bit different. Because you probably know, if you love films and you love cinematographers and you love directors and things like that, that some of those people somehow balance a work-life, we think, kind of situation, and some of them decide early in their career that they're going to forego something like having a family so that they can commit themselves for their lives to a particular craft. Who's a good example of that? Well, good example of that from a cinematography standpoint would be somebody like Roger Deakins. No children, yes, married to somebody who is in the industry and works with them or him on a regular basis. And then there's other people who somehow miraculously have been able to, and it seems to very much be producers and directors, and maybe, I don't know why, have been able to raise families and somehow figure that out. I have no idea what that home life dynamic is there, but you take people like Ron Howard, Francis Ford Coppola, you know, we'll just take those two for now. And they've been able to figure out, at least seemingly, how to have that balance. But I think it's really difficult. It's difficult to say that you're going to do that. So for me, the balance is I do what I do professionally for a living in something that I love to do, which is create content, educate, those types of things. and also raise a family with my wife and try to be at times good and sometimes not as good parents, meaning like, you always evaluate how well you parent your children and how they're going to wind up, and you worry about them all the time. If you have kids, you'll understand. But ultimately, then there's that third lane, which is the hardest one for me to focus on, but in a lot of ways, the one that I want to focus on the most right now, which is growing the area of content creation that I'm most interested in, being able to commit the time to doing that, um, but it doesn't generate any income. So then how do you do what you need to do for the taking care of the kids part and the family? So that's the struggle. And then motivation is also part of that. I don't consider myself a lazy person. I mean, I'm doing a lot of things all of the time between those other two things, not the third lane. Um, but then saying, okay, I'm going to commit to that, because trust me, in the last couple of years, the last 6 months in particular, I I really do want to do something that I want to do daily. But it's very hard for me to see myself being able to do it consistently, because I think consistency is the key. It's not the key just for the audience, it's the key for me. It's at a certain point when I did Gearbox, it was just in me. It was sort of like okay, I'm going to take the next hour today and I'm going to do that. Sometimes I would take 5 hours, sometimes I would take 30 minutes. Um, and then there was the post component of it. And I think there's easier ways to create content now that don't necessarily require as much post production. Um, but then the question is, how valuable is that content? Maybe I shouldn't worry about it. I tend to um, focus on content and make it too precious. And I also think that that's probably an excuse for not doing it. Meaning, well, if I do it this way, it's not going to be high enough quality, and then it's going to suffer. And so you kind of wait for, well, what's the way that we can do that in a way that's going to be still good quality and have value to the viewer. So I don't know. I'm just kind of talking out loud here, but I think that creating long-term projects generally means that what you're trying to do is create a project that is personal to you, that you're going to hopefully have, and usually do because you're thinking about doing it, have passion to do. But then it's getting started and continuing with that. Um, the ending part is easy. And I don't mean ending an edit and uploading a video. I mean, stopping it is the easy part. Not mentally or emotionally, but it's easy to stop. But what's not easy is to say, this is what I'm going to do, and allow it to happen and to do it consistently. So I don't know how it, and then there's always, so again, I kind of go back to the actor part. I don't really suffer from the, I feel like I'm being evaluated all the time, but part of it sits inside of me that, I don't want to let anybody down. I don't want to disappoint the audience because the content I created isn't valuable enough. You always want to have, content that has value to the viewer, and you don't want to have too many throwaway episodes. Live streams are great because live streams allow you to create content instantaneously. I don't have to think about how I'm going to edit this later on. I'm interacting with people, I'm having conversations, but nobody wants to see me doing this every single day. At least I don't think they do. But what I do when the camera is off is I'm constantly doing research on what's going on in the industry, what kind of equipment is being released. I'm fortunate to be in a position where, because of my affiliation with places like B&H, I can get my hands on equipment for short periods of time and actually figure out where I feel that has value to not only me, but to other users. Um, and I also get that opportunity because of the relationships I have with manufacturers in the industry. So, that's a big part of what I have worked on over the years is those relationships. And those relationships are not always financial relationships. They're relationships that I have with companies in this industry that are, um, they're not completely unique, but they're unique in some respects um, because I've known these companies and a lot of the people at these companies for a long time. So I get the opportunity to try, use, and then share what I think has value, and in a different way than reviews, in a different way than here's a brand new thing and I'm going to give you my take on it. There's value to that. Absolutely. We need to have that when we're considering something, and I need those resources when I'm thinking about that. But I'm talking about where do lights and cameras and grip equipment fit into the realities of, in my case, most of the time, small to no crew production. So there's value there. It's just figuring out how to create content around that consistently. Maybe the format isn't structured completely and it's a little bit more fluid. Thaddeus says setting the correct cadence for pulling out the content is the hard part to figure out. Of course, and that's kind of part of the brand. Part of it is the way you create content, the way that content is delivered. It will not resonate with everybody. Um, if you think it will, then you're largely mistaken. But there is certain types of content out there. There are certain types of content out there that will resonate with larger audiences. And by their nature, part of that is the topic or topics that are being delivered and also the way it's being delivered. So, PewDiePie and Mr. Beast didn't become who they are just because, they had some magic formula for growing a channel. Their content, their personality, and their content resonated with larger numbers of people. But trust me, when you watch Mr. Beast videos, if you ever have, or you've checked into that content over time, you will very quickly realize that that person is very serious about what they do and thinks about it. And whether the production value is amazing or not, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Um, there's a plan there. And it is not just let's see what happens and throw it up against the wall and see what sticks. That is not the plan. I guarantee you it is not the plan. And I've seen enough interviews and, I'm curious about how people create content and the way they go about it to say that with certainty that everybody who's wildly successful with the content that they create not only is passionate about it, but they are very serious about and think about what that content is. Chris says there's no dearth of resources that show people how to use cameras or light subjects, etc. But my favorite stuff is when producers show how to go from an idea to a finished product. I agree, Chris, but that's fucking hard. It's hard because in order to create content that really shows you that really gives you that information, it generally takes a lot of work. I'm happy to get up in front of the camera every day for 30 to 45 minutes and talk about things. That's not hard for me to do. I'm used to going up into a classroom, and if there's enough interaction with the people that are here, that's not a hard thing to do. But you're also, as an audience, taking your time and spending it here right now. And that's what everybody does when, you know, when they watch content. They're making a decision for a short period of time, and I don't mean run length or run time of a video, or over a long period of time of making a commitment to the content that a particular channel or creator or influencer or whatever you want to call that is. And that commitment is real, and then over time, if the content that's being created by that channel or that creator or that influencer doesn't resonate or isn't giving that person something new, then your viewing habits start to change. And we've seen that happen consistently. There's sort of patterns that happen with the type of stuff. First, everybody went to see a review of a new product, and then, the content was really short. Then the content became a little bit more educational and a little bit longer. Then it became really long content. Then people started to get disinterested in watching, more than one or two reviews on a product, and they would favor a certain channel. And again, trust me, for the content creators themselves, they're also going through this. They're going through these cycles. Not anybody, nobody wants to create the same stuff all the time, because you're creating, and creating doesn't mean the same. That's not creating. So that's also the struggle that artists have. If you are somebody who's interested in creating content, and you want to create better, more useful content, it can't be the same. And that's why people burn out, because they get into this, they're in the wheel there, and they feel like they just have to keep going and going and going. And then they generally don't have enough time to breathe, to reevaluate and say, I want to take my content in a different direction, or I want to grow as an artist and grow as somebody who's creating this content. So that's the struggle. The struggle is being able to grow, because it happens in every field. You have that first album that comes out from, my age is showing, from an artist, a band, or an individual artist, and then it's successful, and then they feel compelled, because of all the people around them and their audience, but mainly the people around them who have their ear, um, that they have to strike gold again. They have to do something that's similar. They can't go too far off the path. And that's the struggle, is that as an artist, they may want to go down a different direction. And some artists do that incredibly well and very successfully, and other ones just belly flop when they do that. That's the struggle. So it's so hard. That's all I'm saying. And if you are in it yourself and you're trying to do it, I want to acknowledge that it's really hard, because you're doing all of the other things that you're doing, and then you really have this urge to do something that is going to push you creatively, allow you to learn more, to share more if you're going to put that on a platform like this. But the hesitation is real, and you're going to keep coming up with excuses until you either say, that's not the path I want to go on, or I'm going to do this shit. Yeah, that's what I got to say. I got to do this shit, but I have to just start. So I don't know. I don't even know what this live stream is about. I think it had some focus, but the reality is I'm just struggling with the start, and then with the start, the continue. And I'm always concerned that I'm going to lose my passion, my interest in it, because if that happens, then my viewpoint is it doesn't have value to an audience who's going to take their valuable time out of their day to watch you create something. So that's why I always ask, what are people looking for? It's not necessarily that it's going to be something that I'm going to create exactly, but where's the value to you? as an audience, because again, it's your time. You're literally taking part of your life to watch whatever it is that the people you're watching are creating. And this, or this is not every 1 out of 300 videos. You learn something. Maybe it's about cooking, or it's about, how to rig a camera, or whatever it is. How to, I'm not an example of that, but how you want to style yourself, or how you want to do makeup, or whatever it is. But it's the deeper content that's going to allow you to grow yourself. That is the content I think most of us are seeking out. Most of us. That's what I got for you. I don't know. It's I'm happy we got everything working. I don't know what the heck's going on. I'm hoping that by next Wednesday, Ecamm does another update, and there you go. Brandon says, listen to an old episode. You talked in depth about the process of a small crew production, A to Z, pre-pro to pro to post-pro, and listed all the industry terms of people to processing gear. Yeah. I'm happy to do that, Brandon. So, I love talking about that kind of stuff. And, it's not like there's any big secrets. I mean, I think that's the one big bonus to what's happened over the last few years is you have a lot of people sharing, and we have great resources available to us. So, I will definitely keep that in mind. David, I really like the R5C. I think that, the R5 and R6 were very capable cameras. They were definitely hybrid cameras, but they weren't the R5C. I mean, not only did Canon address and solve the problems of recording times that those other cameras had, but they finally have created what I would consider a true hybrid camera system, because when you go into photo mode, you are literally in a stills camera menu system, and then when you go to video mode, you're in the same menu system that you would get in a C70, C300 Mark III, C500 Mark II. It's an 8K camera that shoots in RAW, but also has some other flavors there. I think it's a great camera. We're always going to say it, perfect camera, but it's great. There's something about the cadence of the captured image that if I was going to shoot narrative content, I still am more attracted to the captured image a little bit with the C70, C300 Mark III when we're talking specifically about Canon cameras. But it's no slouch, and it's just so sharp. It's so clean. But I'm going through a lot of the stuff that we shot for this project, and there's there's two key ingredients. There's lots of ingredients, more than two, but it's who's the director of photography, and on that camera, and how are they lighting it, or how are they composing their shots, or how are they moving their camera, all of those things. But it's also the capabilities of the camera system and what can they get out of it. I'm looking at a lot of footage right now from the Alexa 35, and whew, not the right camera for me right now. We kind of talked about that last week, but absolutely beautiful images. But so much of that, 90% of it, has to do with the people who are actually capturing those images. That's what I got. I have a meeting in about 10 minutes. So I appreciate everybody coming by. We'll come up with something for next week. And who knows, maybe in the near future, I'll actually start this series that I want to start. Once I start, though, I can't stop. Thanks, everybody. If you didn't catch it live, hopefully the replay has some value to you. Take care and see you next week.